Good evening. You're watching India First. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Big story coming in. Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal has exposed the double standards of the Western Bloc on sanctions on Russian oil. Very politely, very firmly, and with a big smile on his face, he's very clearly put India first and Indian interests supreme. The Commerce Minister was speaking in Berlin. The conversation came around Trump tariff sanctions and Russian oil. The US sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil imposed on the 22nd of October. And I want to give you a little background. So the US Treasury imposed sanctions on the two Russian companies under an executive order 14024, target the Russian oil giants to curb Moscow's war funding. So as secondary sanctions, they've penalized third countries and entities dealing with these firms, prompting compliance from major buyers like India and China. However, and this is where the devil is in the detail, some European countries with deep energy ties with Russia have actively sought exemptions or work around the sanctions. I'll get you more on the story, but first, listen in to Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal talking about Germany and UK either actively seeking or being granted a special license. Listen in to Piyush Goyal.
So I was reading in today's paper, Germany is asking for exemption from US sanctions on oil. Now these are UK already has sorted and probably got an exemption for procuring oil from the US.
This is about the Rosneft deal, sanctions, right. I think, and we've sorted out the issues with Germany. We managed to do that very quickly, and I think the Americans will do something very similar.
So then why single out India?
Well, it's a specific subsidiary in relation to Rosneft.
We also have a subsidiary in India of the Rosneft.
Well, come and talk to us.
Why single out India? That is what Union Commerce Minister of India, Piyush Goyal, says. So if companies in Germany are seeking and are being granted an exemption, and subsidiaries of Rosneft, if companies in the United Kingdom are seeking and are being granted an exemption, if companies in Hungary are seeking and are being granted an exemption or continue to take oil from Russia, why sanction India or companies in India? Joining me for more on India First is the group Business Today's Group's Managing Editor, Siddharth Zarabi. Siddharth, Piyush Goyal, very politely but very firmly, a smile on his face, has exposed the double standards of the West. Imposing sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil would impact India and Germany, but India and China, but Germany, UK, they're seeking or are being granted exemptions.
And you know what Minister Goyal is doing, and he called it out in Berlin, by the way, is something that's been happening ever since the Russia-Ukraine war started and the energy crisis that Europe faced and their dependence on Russian energy. This is not the first time, and I'm really glad that it was called out in the manner it was, because this preferential kind of a way and this Western bloc coming together and people of the same kind therefore aligning against people of the other kind, I think this is a sentiment that Commerce Minister has called out. Why is it significant? Because remember, even for the United States, their trade actions have not been uniform across the world.
Yes.
The way they have treated the single largest buyer of Russian crude oil, which is China, and continues to do so. And imagine, Gaurav, a scenario as companies like Reliance, and Reliance has, by the way, over the last hour or so, put out a statement where they have acknowledged the sanctions and said that they are going to assess how do they navigate this effectively. I think China will become a beneficiary of even cheaper Russian crude because the Russians won't have an option. And imagine the dichotomy or the stupidity of a trade strategy where China, supposedly #1 rival of the United States, manages and gets to save more money, billions of dollars more, on importing cheaper Russian crude. So,
absolutely.
So it is the absolute ramshackle nature of the approach of the Western Bloc to Russian.
No, and the double standards, they're blatant double standards. America continues to get palladium. America continues to buy fertilizer, but America does not want any other country to take it from Russia. Before I get you more on the story, and Siddharth and I will focus on these double standards that Piyush Goyal has so openly exposed. Listen in to India's Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal in Berlin once again.
So I was reading in today's paper, Germany is asking for exemption from US sanctions on oil. Now these are UK already has sorted and probably got an exemption for procuring oil
No.
from the US.
This is about the Rosneft deal, sanctions, I think, and we've sorted out the issues with Germany. We managed to do that very quickly, and I think the Americans will do something very similar.
So then why single out India?
Well, it's a specific subsidiary in relation to Rosneft.
We also have a subsidiary in India of the Rosneft.
Well, come and talk to us.
He has a smile on his face, but he's saying it very clearly, Siddharth. Why single India out? And this is information that's in public domain. So Germany is actively seeking exemption for Rosneft's German subsidiary, and Germany is lobbying the US Treasury for a formal waiver, is what sources are telling India today. The devil very clearly here is in the detail. So there are two units, we are told, even in the UK, that are either seeking or have been granted exemption.
On a broader basis, Europe surrendered its security sovereignty long back to the United States. It did not focus on its energy security. Germany has for years was called the sick man of Europe. They put environment in front, and today are in a situation where while they are always morally calling out the Russian invasion of Ukraine as it should be, the fact is that they are tied to the hip to Russia as far as energy security is concerned. And remember that pipeline that was blown up in very highly suspicious circumstances, that caused further problems. So effectively, and that response, come and talk to us, with that smirk on the face, reveals not just ignorance of the fact that Rosneft is one of the largest investors in India. It also shows how these countries and this trading bloc has for decades lived off cheap Russian gas. And when the chips came calling, it is India that is being pressurized. And I think this is a very significant moment at this point of time. Gaurav, remember, there is a 30-day period for the sanctions to take into effect. And I really hope that the envelope gets pushed even further on this.
Oh, absolutely, because it's not just the United Kingdom, it's not just Germany. What we are also learning is countries like Hungary, they're also exploring ways to work around these sanctions. Incidentally, the EU's 19th sanctions package, apparently it seeks to or already does spare Lukoil. So it just, Siddharth, it just goes on to show that there are different rules for different entities, sparing some, taking action against others.
So it also shows that the United States and major European economies are not on the same page. And this is another defining feature of what President Trump has unleashed on the world. Look at Canada. That trade deal not worth the paper that it was signed on. Look at what has happened with Japan, and look at how European partners have been put out in the cold. Literally, the winter is upon Europe and much of the Western Hemisphere. They have been left out in the cold. And as you keep counting countries, and more points of view will come out, for them dealing with that winter without cheap Russian energy supplies will become an existential question.
Now let's talk about the politics around this subject in our country. Siddharth, stay with me. But Union Commerce Minister, before we move on, I want you to listen in to Union Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal once again.
Now these are UK already has sorted and probably got an exemption for procuring oil from the US.
This is about the Rosneft deal, sanctions, I think, and we've sorted out the issues with Germany. We managed to do that very quickly, and I think the Americans will do something very similar.
So then why single out India?
Well, it's a specific subsidiary in relation to Rosneft.
We also have a subsidiary in India of the Rosneft.
Well, come and talk to us.
So I was reading in today's paper, Germany is asking for exemption from US sanctions on oil.